Celia and Nathan made a bet. And the girlfriend of the losing side had to strip naked. I didn't agree. Nathan said, Celia, I'm going to use your third promise to help me teach Aria a lesson. Aria was his ex-girlfriend. She heartlessly abandoned him when he was in the most difficult situation. Nathan hated her. Meeting her today in a narrow path. Nathan wanted to take revenge. I agreed. At the last moment of the billiards game, Aria pleaded with a pale face. Nathan, don't. Nathan was silent for a while and deliberately missed the shot, ending in defeat. People jeered and asked me to take off my clothes. Nathan whispered, Celia, you can just cheat. I gave him a deep look and walked towards Aria's boyfriend. I'll take it off. I love Nathan. Very much. We were childhood sweethearts and innocent playmates. We played in the wind and ran under the starry sky. We went to the seaside to see the piled-up thick clouds, and also went to the Antarctic to see the waddling penguins. For countless days and nights, we were in each other's company. But unfortunately, he doesn't love me. He regards me as a buddy. He fell in love with a girl like a gardenia. On an ordinary afternoon, with the setting sun shining, we walked merrily through that ordinary road section we had passed countless times. A girl with long, shiny black hair and wearing a pleated skirt was standing on the roadside crying. The setting sun shone on her face, like pear blossoms in the rain, with crystal clear teardrops. She was like an elegant gardenia quietly blooming on the street. Nathan's pace slowed down. At that time, my short hair was flying wildly, like a chicken coop. I was waving a cup of milk tea in my hand, with a straw in my mouth, laughing out loud. Nathan sighed. Look at you. And then look at her. I tilted my head. What's wrong? Nathan said. Learn from her. Even her crying is so elegant. After that, he walked over to the girl and asked, Why are you crying? He cared about a girl he had never met before. The two of them had a great talk. I stood beside biting my milk tea. The milk tea didn't taste sweet at all. It was even a bit bitter. Since that day, that girl like a gardenia had appeared in the lives of Nathan and me, and started her passionate love affair with Nathan. I had been with Nathan for more than 10 years and had a secret crush on him for more than 10 years. But it couldn't compete with that ordinary evening. Under the setting sun. The look he gave Aria. Childhood sweethearts are no match for the one who suddenly appears. Maybe it's a curse. Perhaps love is never reasonable. Love doesn't mean that just because you have been with someone for a long time and have given a lot, he will love you. I was sad. But I also understood. Nathan nervously asked me what girls liked and how to get along with them. I put away my feelings and pointed out with a smile. Like a good friend. He shared every bit of his relationship with Aria with me and his cautious, loving mood. I listened quietly and then went to buy another cup of milk tea with 70 sugar. It was still bitter. Time passed quietly. And a lot of things happened in between. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Today, 10 years later, I broke the curse and became Nathan's girlfriend. The childhood sweetheart defeated the one who suddenly appeared. My wish came true. I was so happy. But this happiness was mixed with bitterness. 1 o'clock in the morning. I had drunk a lot of alcohol and my head was dizzy. I touched my forehead with my hand to check the temperature. I had a low-grade fever and wanted to sleep. Nathan said, Celia, I want to play billiards. Looking at those star-like eyes, I couldn't refuse and said softly, Okay. The lights in the billiards room were hazy. Nathan held a slender cue, with a smile on his lips. Amid the amazement of everyone, he bent down and easily pocketed all the billiard balls in an elegant and leisurely manner. Then he stood up and smiled modestly at everyone. Everyone cheered. My friend Annabelle sighed. Celia, your boyfriend is not only handsome but also plays billiards very well. Dizziness hit me. I rubbed my temples and said softly, I'm going to the bathroom. The fever was getting worse and my head hurt. I was originally sleeping at home, with one phone call from Nathan. I got out of bed to keep him company. Just like countless times before. After washing my face with cold water, the cold feeling kept me awake. I took my bag and went back to the billiards room. I saw Nathan at a glance. And the woman beside him, Aria, who had disappeared for a year. The atmosphere was very tense. Nathan clenched his fists and stared at Aria. Dared to bet? Aria still had long, shiny black hair and was wearing a linen long dress. Like a pure gardenia. Her expression was quiet and restrained. Looking very pitiful. Beside her stood a tall and handsome man with an earring and a wild expression. Sylvester. The famous prodigal and son of the Sylvester family group. I asked. What's going on? Annabelle leaned over and told me the whole story. After I went to the bathroom, Aria accompanied Sylvester into the billiards room. The two of them were very close. Seemingly a couple. This scene was seen by Nathan, who was greatly stimulated. He rushed up to provoke Sylvester and wanted to have a billiards match with him. Nathan proposed that the girlfriend of the losing side should strip naked in public. My friends said. It seems that Nathan still hates Aria and wants to make her look bad. I remained silent. Since Aria left 3 years ago, Nathan had never mentioned her name. Once her name was mentioned, Nathan's face would turn gloomy. With a gnashing of teeth look. Everyone thought he hated Aria. So did I. Back then, Nathan and Dario were in love and were about to get engaged soon. Unexpectedly, something happened to Nathan's family. And overnight, it was on the verge of collapse. On the day of the engagement, there were many guests. When the time came, Aria didn't show up. Knowing that he had been abandoned, Nathan, in a hurry, called me. I came to his side in my dress and put on the engagement ring he had prepared for Aria, and completed the engagement banquet. The two families got married. As a result, Nathan's family got a chance to catch their breath and safely weathered the storm. After the noisy engagement banquet, I couldn't help but confess my love to Nathan. He was very surprised. After a long silence, he gently hugged me. He said that after all the twists and turns, the person by his side was still me. He finally realized my goodness and wanted to marry me. Leaning against his warm chest, I wept silently. During that time, I was very happy. But soon, I couldn't be happy anymore. Aria's running away from the wedding made Nathan hate her to the core. He said he would never forgive her. But I often saw him sitting on the terrace, staring blankly at Aria's photo. Several times when he was drunk, he kissed me forcefully. But Aria's name was on his lips. I was sad and sorrowful. But there was nothing I could do. The person who falls in love first is doomed to lose. He had never loved me. I had always known that. Many times I asked myself, is it necessary? Why must I love him? But love is unreasonable. Love is that I had been with Nathan for more than 10 years. But he turned a blind eye to me. Yet fell in love with Aria at first sight on the roadside. Love is that I know clearly that he is not worth my trouble, and that I shouldn't be so deeply involved. But I can't break free all the time. Love is doing what is known to be impossible. It makes people miserable and crazy. I don't know what I can do to make him love me. All I can do is to be even nicer to him. Even if I have a high fever today. If he makes a call, I will get up and keep him company. If he wants to play billiards until dawn, I will also accompany him. Perhaps over time, he will gradually forget Aria and fall in love with me. Just a little tired. More and more tired. While I was distracted, the quarrel over there ended. Sylvester had a smile on his lips. And his eyes were dark and dangerous. Nathan, it's not very nice of you to make such a bet. Can your girlfriend accept it? He turned his head and made eye contact with me across the crowd. His eyes slightly curved. That gaze was so aggressive that it made my breath hitch slightly. When his eyes swept over my body inch by inch, my skin actually trembled slightly. I quickly looked away. Nathan walked to my side with a gloomy face. Celia, do you agree? I shook my head. No. Nathan pulled me to a secluded place and begged me with his head down. Celia. Please. I was a little dazed. He rarely showed vulnerability and begged like this. And it was hard for me to resist. But I stammered to refuse. This is too much. Whether it was me taking off my clothes or Aria taking off her clothes. It was not what I wanted to see. Seeing that he couldn't persuade me, Nathan said softly, "Remember that you once promised me to do 3 things unconditionally? This is the 3rd one." I looked up and stared at him intently. In high school, I was locked in an abandoned basement. Just then, there was a once-in-a-century heavy rainstorm. The precipitation in the whole city reached an unprecedented level. And many places were flooded. The basement where I was dark and damp. During the long time, the cold rainwater rose little by little, covering my calves, waist, and chest, and finally submerging my head. I screamed and struggled desperately for survival, but was powerless. The fear of watching myself die helplessly is still unforgettable to this day. In a half-conscious state, someone pulled me out of the basement. When I opened my eyes, it was Nathan's concerned face. He brought people to save me. It was hard for others to imagine how tumultuous my heart was when I saw his face and knew that he had saved me. And how I worshipped him like a god. I had already had a crush on him secretly. After that incident, my love grew deeper and deeper. I said to him, "You saved my life. I promise to help you do 3 things unconditionally." Nathan smiled with his eyes curved and knocked on my head. "Who wants you to repay me?" He didn't take it to heart. But I was determined to repay him. After pestering him for a long time, he said helplessly, "Then do the first thing for me. I want to drink the milk tea at the intersection. With 70 sugar. Nathan doesn't like to drink milk tea. It is me who likes to drink milk tea." I rushed to the milk tea shop excitedly and bought 2 cups. He gave me 1 cup and took 1 for himself. We sat on the nearby stone steps, drinking milk tea, and laughing in the sun. Using one of the 3 promises to buy milk tea. Is it a bit of a loss? How could it be a loss? The young man laughed out loud. His clear and handsome eyebrows and eyes shone brightly in the sunset. Who could not love such a person? I blushed, my heart beating like a drum, and wrote love letters all night that day. While I was still hesitating about when to give the love letter to Nathan, that evening, he met Aria and fell in love at first sight. A long time later, I received a call from Nathan. His voice was hoarse. "Why didn't you come to my engagement banquet?" I wiped away my tears and pretended to be relaxed. "I've already said that I'm busy and can't come." He asked warily, "You once promised me that you would unconditionally help me do 3 things. Does that still count?" I said, "Of course it does." He said, "Then can you get engaged to me?" After being surprised, my voice trembled slightly. "Okay." He didn't know that I wasn't in the city that day. In order to be in time, I took the cliff road known as the Death Road and sped all the way back to the city. I changed into a dress, walked into the banquet hall with excitement, and put on the ring he had prepared for another woman. Memories fade in the dim light. I looked at Nathan's half-lit face and confirmed, "Do you want to use my last promise to help you?" His expression was angry, his eyes dark, and he nodded without hesitation. "Yes. I want to teach Aria a lesson. And also give Sylvester a lesson. As long as you help me this time, we will be even." Be even. For a moment, I was a little at a loss. These words seemed to imply that apart from those 3 promises, there was no connection between us. "Celia, don't worry. I'm very good at playing billiards. I won't lose. And you won't have to take off your clothes in public." He promised me. "I just want to teach Aria a lesson. You should know how much I hate her." Yes. He is very skillful. He probably won't lose. But does he really hate Aria? A strange feeling of suffocation spread in my chest. I said, "Okay." Nathan breathed a sigh of relief and turned around impatiently to walk towards Sylvester and Aria. "Celia has agreed." Sylvester smiled. "I also agree on my side." Aria's face was pale, and she stared blankly at Nathan. I don't know why she agreed. She probably won't tell me the answer. Everyone moved aside to make room. Nathan and Sylvester stood in front of the billiard table, like two beasts centering the arena. Sylvester's skill was unexpectedly good, and he had a good fight with Nathan. In the first game, Nathan won. In the second game, Sylvester narrowly won. The third game would decide the winner. By this time it was already 2 o'clock in the morning. The billiard room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The hand of the alarm clock on the wall ticked forward. Everyone stared nervously at billiard balls. Sylvester's skill was not as good as Nathan's. It was already lucky for him to win the second game, and he played terribly in the third game. The outcome was without suspense. I loosened my clenched hands and let out a gentle breath. Aria stood beside, her face getting paler. At the last moment, her frail body trembled slightly. She opened her mouth and shook her head with tears in her eyes. Nathan, don't. Nathan trembled and looked up. Their eyes met across the crowd. It was as if some kind of sentiment had crossed thousands of mountains and rivers, penetrated time and space, and merged together again. Everything, including me and Sylvester, became their background. After a while, Nathan lowered his eyes. At that instant, a vague premonition rose in my heart. He picked up the cue and bent over. The night outside the window was silent, with fragmented neon lights. Pop the black ball, went into the hole. A mistake. Someone shouted excitedly. Young Master Sylvester has won. Someone's girlfriend has to take off her clothes in public. I closed my eyes. I lost. People who don't understand billiards may think it was a mistake, but anyone who knows a little bit about it knows that Nathan lost on purpose. I don't know if it was because of the fever, but my head hurt. My chest hurt. Every part of my body hurt. My eyes were so uncomfortable that tears were about to flow out. Nathan came to his senses amid the jeers of the crowd and turned to look at me. I carefully examined his expression. He seemed very guilty and embarrassed. I thought self-mockingly, thank him for still being able to feel guilty. Nathan walked up to me and pulled me to a corner. Celia, don't really take off your clothes. You are a girl. Be a bit naughty. Cry a little, and others will pity you and won't force you. And noisy voices mixed with the turbid air in the billiard room were disgusting. Hey, you won't break your promise, will you? Someone shouted. Chen Celia, the eldest daughter of the Chen family, won't be a person who breaks her word, will she? Is this the family style of the Chen family? Nathan turned his head angrily and shouted. Shut up. The people brought by Sylvester, indignant at Nathan's provocation, grew louder and louder in their heckling and were determined to make me take off my clothes. In the bustling crowd, Aria stood beside Sylvester, smiling calmly and looking elegant and composed. She seemed more like a real young lady than me, the eldest daughter of the Chen family. Nathan had once said, people who don't know would think that Aria is the eldest daughter. You're just like a tomboy. The crowd grew more and more rowdy. Anger welled up in me. I shook off Nathan's hand and strode to the center of the billiards room, saying in a deep voice, I, Celia Chen, always keep my word and will never break my promise. Oh, the eldest daughter is so great. Stop talking nonsense. Admit defeat as you should in a bet. Hurry up and take it off. Countless people were heckling. Sylvester raised his eyebrows and looked me up and down with an inquiring gaze. Nathan walked anxiously to my side. Celia. I looked at him and said earnestly, Nathan, you still don't understand me up to now. I've never been the kind of woman who can cry a little, feign pity with her tears, and then renege on her word. Nathan was stunned. I picked up my phone and made a call to my assistant, Sister Lee. Find someone to bring the screen from home. The others asked me what I meant by bringing the screen. Despite everyone's doubts, I said to the unruly man leaning against the billiards table, Sylvester, in the bet between you and Nathan, There was no rule saying that a screen couldn't be used for cover, right? As long as the bettors agreed. Then I wouldn't be breaking my promise. Sylvester smiled. Miss Chen. You're so sly. I had a high fever and my head and body were hurting more and more. I endured it strongly and pretended to be calm. I'm not breaking the agreement by doing this. If you use the screen for cover, we won't be able to see anything? He narrowed his eyes and smiled, slightly turning his head, and the gleam of his gem-studded earring flashed by. I bit my lip and clenched my fist at my side. My heart was pounding. After a while, well, the hateful man said slowly, let me go behind the screen. The others can't see. But I, as an innocent victim, should get my spoils at least. What? He wants to come in and see? Oh, all the others started shouting and heckling, saying that if I didn't agree, I might as well just cry a little and renege on my word. I shamefully clenched my fist and bit my lip, saying, okay, take a step back on both sides and quickly end this farce. Let Sylvester take a look. Well, it's okay too. Anyway, it's not too much of a loss to be seen by him. Beside me, Aria, whose face had regained its rosy color, turned pale again. How ironic. My boyfriend deliberately lost the game for her. Her boyfriend didn't care about her face and wanted to watch me take off my clothes in public. Everyone could see that Aria and Nathan still had feelings for each other. And Sylvester and I were having an ambiguous relationship. Everything was in chaos. No. Nathan anxiously strode forward and grabbed my wrist. Celia, are you going to take off your clothes for another man to see? He was very angry. Obviously. You could get away with being a bit sly. Why must you take off your clothes? I smiled bitterly. Be sly? Once I'm sly, everyone will think that I'm untrustworthy. Who will trust me then? Nathan asked. Does that matter? He actually asked me if it mattered. My reputation, my dignity, don't they matter? Right. If they mattered, he wouldn't have bet with me using me as a stake. Aria gently persuaded. Only low-class strippers would take off their clothes in public. Celia, don't be so stubborn. My heart ached. And I asked her, Aria, if you had lost this time, would you take off your clothes? Aria was a bit embarrassed and subconsciously looked at Nathan. Nathan interrupted. I won't let her take off her clothes. I laughed at myself. It was like this again. When Nathan was with me, he was very nice to me. If someone bullied me, he would stand up for me. But if it was Aria, Nathan would eliminate the enemy for her before that person could bully her. He would never let her be wronged at all. So Aria could remain elegant and not be as wretched as me. My heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. And I questioned Nathan, since you've already decided not to let her take off her clothes, why did you deliberately lose? Nathan was stunned. You won't let her take off her clothes. So why did you make this bet? Whether you win or lose, she won't take off her clothes. But if you lose, I have to take off mine. I asked. So, why did you have to make me lose? Tears gushed out. Nathan was flustered and at a loss. Celia. He wanted to open his mouth to explain, but couldn't say anything. I wiped away my tears. The 3 promises have been fulfilled. You said that after today we would owe each other nothing. Well, then let's owe each other nothing. Nathan. After today, we are no longer boyfriend and girlfriend. We've broken up. Nathan's eyes widened. I walked up to Sylvester. I will fulfill the bet. Sylvester put down his wine glass and smiled. Miss Chen keeps her word. Well done. Half an hour later, Sister Lee sent someone to move the screen from home into the billiards room. A 3-fold screen isolated a space in the corner. I walked in under the gaze of everyone. The screen is not a wall, and the gaps in the patterns are slightly transparent. My body stood behind the screen, casting a silhouette on the embroidered landscape surface, with all my curves exposed, faintly visible yet also completely out of sight at the same time. Now, It's time for me to take my spoils. Sylvester glanced at Nathan lightly and walked into the screen. Nathan clenched his fists. Since the end of the billiards game, his eyes had never looked at Aria again. Sylvester walked in. The ambiguous silhouettes of me and Sylvester were projected on the screen. The man stood in front of me, just a foot away. After a long while, he sighed and asked in a voice only the two of us could hear, "Sister, is this the man you chose over me?" I pursed my lips tightly. No need for a lecture. The man had a smile on his lips and narrowed his eyes. "Fine. A bet is a bet. Go ahead." He made a gesture of invitation. Looking at his smile, my whole body stiffened. Nathan didn't know that our families had once arranged a marriage between me and Sylvester. I was in love with Nathan at that time, so of course I didn't agree. My family secretly arranged a blind date, brought me into the club, and locked me in with Sylvester, trying to foster feelings between us. Knowing that I had been deceived, I was furious and vented all my anger on Sylvester, yelling at him. "I, Celia Chen, would rather die, jump out of here, than marry you." I pointed at the window and swore. Sylvester didn't say a word. When I finished yelling, he suddenly hugged me, opened the window, and jumped outside. At that moment, my mind went blank with fear, and I held on to the window sill tightly. Sylvester let go of me, with an evil and handsome smile. "Sister, look. You don't want to jump, and you don't want to die, which means you are still willing to marry me." Madman. Complete madman. I looked at him in fear, only wanting to escape. The smile on his face when he hugged me and jumped out of the window overlapped with the smile on his face now. I trembled all over. "Take it off." Sylvester raised his eyebrows, his smile not reaching his eyes. I put my finger on my collar but didn't have the courage to continue. Gritting my teeth, I tried to stay calm and reached out to unzip my dress. I don't know if I was too nervous, but I couldn't unzip it after several tries. "Do you need my help?" The man walked around to my back, and his large hand was placed on my neck. His hand was very hot. The palm was rough. His warm fingers touched my skin, causing a slight shiver. His hand stopped at the back of my neck, as if observing my reaction. I was so stiff that I didn't dare to move, and my mind was blank. "If you don't speak, it means you agree." I closed my eyes and bit my lip without saying a word. At that moment, my mind was in chaos. Fear and anxiety dominated, and I couldn't think calmly at all. In a daze, I actually agreed to let him help me take it off. The dress fell. I suddenly came to my senses, took a step forward, and hugged my body tightly. Outside the screen, countless pairs of eyes were looking. Inside the screen, the hateful and terrifying man was gradually stripping me. I was shaking all over. "Sylvester, don't be too fucking much." Nathan roared outside the screen, as if he was about to rush in. "Don't move," Sylvester said in a deep voice. "If you dare to come in, I'll push down the screen and let everyone admire your girlfriend's body." Nathan's hand touching the screen froze. I was so frightened that my face turned ashen, and I hugged myself and shivered. My red lips parted slightly, and my voice was small. "Don't." "No." Sylvester's hand touching me stopped. After a moment, suddenly, he pinched my chin, put his head close to my ear, and said breathlessly, "Let me kiss you, and you don't have to take off all your clothes." I looked up. His eyes were like a wolf's, emitting a faint light. We were very close, so close that I could smell the faint tobacco scent on him. Our figures overlapped on the screen, extremely ambiguous. To those outside, it looked like Sylvester had taken off my clothes and was hugging me and kissing me. At that time, I didn't realize it. All I could think was, if I don't have to take off all my clothes, it seems okay to be kissed. "Sylvester, stop it. You fucker." A roar. Before I could react, the enraged Nathan forgot the bet. Forgot that I was standing inside the screen, and actually reached out directly to push down the screen and rushed in. Bang, the screen collapsed. The people in the billiards room all turned their eyes this way. I was a little dazed. The man beside me hugged me tightly, pushed me into the corner, and used his tall body to block everyone's view. Put the screen up. Sylvester frowned deeply, his face full of hostility. Nathan was stunned and stood somewhat at a loss in front of the collapsed screen, stammering, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." I slowly came back to my senses, suppressing the scream in my throat and huddling tightly in Sylvester's arms. He was wearing a gaudy, currently popular puffy trendy jacket. It was very thin, very hip-hop. He looked like an unreliable hooligan at first sight. He opened his jacket and wrapped it around my body. At that moment, I suddenly felt that Sylvester, the non-mainstream hip-hop lunatic with rebellious behavior, seemed more reliable than Nathan, the worldly elite in his gentle and refined attire. He held me tightly, which actually made me feel very secure. I actually felt a sense of security from this lunatic. "Hurry up!" Sylvester roared again. My friend Annabelle was the first to react. She quickly ran forward and set up the screen. Sister Lee and the assistant also helped in a flurry. After setting up the screen, Sylvester let go of me, walked out of the screen with a sullen face, grabbed the stunned Nathan and punched him hard. Nathan took 2 punches, and then came to his senses and fought back. Through the screen, I saw the faint figures of the 2 scuffling. I picked up the dress on the ground. My fingers were trembling, and it took me several tries to put it on. Then I rushed out of the billiards room, as if fleeing, not wanting to care about anything anymore. Only after running out did I realize that I had forgotten to bring my bag. My mobile phone and bank card were all left in the billiards room. I was empty-handed and couldn't escape home even if I wanted to. And I didn't want to see anyone either, so I continued walking along the early morning street. As the cold wind blew, my whole body burned even more fiercely, and my headache was splitting. Strangely, I didn't cry. Perhaps the high fever was so severe that it dried up the water in my body, along with my years-long, wet feelings for Nathan. I staggered forward. The city's neon lights were flashing, and it was vast. The nightlife on the bar street was bustling, and people were coming and going around me. I was surrounded by the hustle and bustle and the sea of people, but I felt extremely lonely. I accidentally stepped on something and fell to the ground. The crowd surged towards me and surrounded me, just like in the basement back then. Countless tides of water surrounded me and submerged my body inch by inch. Suffocating, uncomfortable. Before losing consciousness, I vaguely saw a person push through the crowd and rush over to pick me up. My first reaction was actually, it must not be Nathan again. I didn't want to be rescued by him again. I didn't want to owe him anymore. When I woke up, I was already lying on a hospital bed. I opened my eyes and stared at the white ceiling for a long time, unable to come back to my senses. The door opened, and Annabelle walked into the room with breakfast in hand. Seeing that I was awake, she said happily, "Celia." I breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was Annabelle who saved me. "Oh, you fainted yesterday. It was Sylvester who saved you. He also paid the medical bill. He also left a note." Annabelle handed me a blank piece of paper. It said, "I'm sorry, sister." I pursed my lips. Annabelle observed my expression for a while, not knowing what she had misinterpreted. She explained, "Nathan didn't arrive in time because Sylvester beat him and made him lame. So he couldn't come. If he hadn't been injured, he should have come to save you." I said, "Thanks Sylvester for making him lame, but I don't thank him for saving me. What he did was too presumptuous and made me very unhappy." Annabelle was stunned for a moment. She carefully observed my face and asked, "Celia, are you really going to break up with Nathan?" "Break up? Maybe others think I'm acting on impulse, but I know for myself that I have no desire to turn back. Yes, I broke up with him." Annabelle didn't quite believe it. She said she had seen how much I had loved Nathan over the years and that I wouldn't give up so quickly. I said, before yesterday. I thought so too. Love is unreasonable. It comes like a strong wind. Just like Nathan's love at first sight for Aria. It goes like a wisp of smoke. Just like my feelings for him. After burning to the extreme, they can dissipate with the wind in the blink of an eye. Nathan can fall in love with someone else very quickly. I can also stop loving him instantly. It's very fair in its unrecent balance. When the high fever subsided, Annabelle helped me with the discharge procedures. As soon as we got off the elevator, we saw Nathan hobbling over on crutches. Celia. Seeing me. Nathan's eyes lit up. I looked behind him and said, "Where's Aria? Didn't she take care of you?" Nathan's face was stiff. And he said in a low voice, "Aria is Sylvester's girlfriend. Why would she take care of me?" I suddenly realized, I forgot. After confirming my intentions, Annabelle was not at all polite in her speech. Oh. So someone remembers that Aria is someone else's girlfriend. Yesterday someone was so excited and so self-righteous in helping someone else's girlfriend. People who don't know might think that Aria is someone's girlfriend. My phone was very embarrassed. I didn't want to be entangled with him, and said softly, "Let's go." Annabelle gave Nathan a disdainful look and left, holding me by the arm. "Celia." Nathan chased after us anxiously. "Sorry. It was my fault last night. Please forgive me. I swear I will never look at Aria again. I bought you your favorite milk tea. 70% sweet." He hurriedly caught up with me on his crutches and put the milk tea in his hand into my arms. It was cold to the touch. I returned the milk tea to him and said seriously, "Nathan, I haven't drunk milk tea for a long time. I used to like milk tea, which was sweet and bitter. But later I found that no matter how much sugar I added, it could never reach the desired level of sweetness. So I stopped drinking it." Nathan was stunned and seemed a little at a loss. Annabelle and I walked out of the hospital. The sun was blinding. My eyes were sore and on the verge of tears. Annabelle looked at me worriedly. "Celia." I rubbed my eyes and smiled. "Let's go." Nathan and I still regarded each other as the young selves in our memories. But he was no longer the passionate and innocent boy he used to be. And I was no longer the girl who could be coaxed with a cup of milk tea. Youth was beautiful. But it was doomed to disappear. Nathan had difficulty moving and couldn't catch up with me. I said goodbye to Annabelle, and went home. Back home. After hesitating for a long time, I told my father that I wanted to break off the engagement. My father called me into his study. "At first, you shirk your responsibility as the Chen family's daughter, were unwilling to marry into the Sylvester family, and insisted on being with Nathan. Now suddenly you want to break off the engagement. Is this proper?" I was silent for a moment and then bowed my head and said, "Sorry, Dad. At first, I thought Sylvester was a dissipated playboy at Nathan and was the affectionate and reliable person. Only now do I realize I was wrong." My father sighed. "Men understand men. I, your father, have lived for decades and know which men are reliable. The person I chose for you is by no means a scoundrel." I pursed my lips and remained silent. My father said earnestly, "I know that since childhood. I plan to arrange a marriage for you, not allowing you to get involved in business, and handing the business over to your brother. You have complaints about my arrangement in your heart. So when you knew that I was going to marry you to Sylvester, you broke down and got angry with the Sylvester family's son. I admit that I was a bit patriarchal. But I have never treated you unfairly. And I will never sell my daughter for glory. You made a scene. But the Sylvester family's son didn't use it as an excuse to suppress us. And I, your father, didn't force you into an arranged marriage again. Even when you got engaged to Nathan without asking for permission first. I recognized it. Even after all this. Do you still think I don't love you?" Tears unconsciously covered my face. "Sorry, Dad. Are you sure you want to break off the engagement?" I nodded. "Yes." My father said, "If you want to break off the engagement, You have to follow my arrangement for an arranged marriage. Is that okay? My heart was already numb. And I nodded, okay. But after the arranged marriage, I want my share of the shares. Don't worry. Unless it is absolutely necessary. I won't be meddlesome and participate in the company's decision-making. Love has been destroyed. I no longer have any illusions. I also don't want equal fatherly love anymore. Wanting love and equal fatherly love is meaningless except to ask for trouble. So just seize the money. Don't want anything else. Don't want anything else. My father hesitated for a moment and then nodded. It's a deal. I left with the share transfer letter in my hand. That day, I sat in my room, looking at the sunset outside the window, and remained silent for a long time. The setting sun sank and the moon and stars rose. The hazy night shrouded my motionless figure. I thought, in the future, for the arranged marriage. At least my father won't really marry me to a very unreliable person. I will take the money and live the life of an ordinary rich lady. Most wealthy women live like this. I'm already happier than a lot of people. Celia, don't be greedy. You're a girl. Of course you can't compare to your brother. Their father has been very kind to you already. Be content. You're a tomboy with a tough temper. Of course you can't compare to the elegant and gentle Aria. Nathan never loved you in the first place. Having loved passionately is enough. Be content. My father was quick and decisive in his actions. The next day, he took me to meet a blind date. The familiar club. The familiar room. It was exactly the same as the layout a few years ago. I was slightly stunned. I pushed the door and entered. The light shining through the window glass illuminated the familiar alocasia macro RHIZI. And a familiar person. He stood with his back to me, not wearing a gaudy coat. Instead, he was wearing a neat black suit. He looked very proper. Hearing the noise, Sylvester turned his head and smiled. Hello, uncle. Hello, sister. Suddenly, I didn't know what to do. My father patted me on the shoulder. Have a good talk. If you two can reach an agreement, then get married through an arranged marriage. If not, just pretend you haven't met. After my father left, the room became quiet. Sylvester tilted his head. Sit? With wild movements. The gemstone ear stud on his left ear flashed a glint. The familiar feeling was back. He was still that dissolute playboy. The docile and proper look just now was indeed an illusion. We sat facing each other, separated by a small square table. The sunlight fell on the beige tabletop, showing a gentle and warm texture, and was reflected on his fair face. Suddenly, I noticed that his eyes were dark brown, and his pupils were clear and transparent, like glass. Aren't you having a girlfriend? Why are you on a blind date? I asked. Aren't you still not officially broken off the engagement? Why are you on a blind date? He counter-asked. After a moment of silence, we both laughed at the same time. It was surprisingly harmonious. Aria is not my girlfriend. Isn't she? Sylvester dropped a bombshell. She is my father's girlfriend. I was so shocked that I couldn't speak. He smiled. So I don't have a girlfriend. The conversation became smooth, and I heard a jaw-dropping story. When Sylvester was in high school, his father had an affair with a woman. That woman looked exactly like Sylvester's father's first love. She was very shrewd and made Sylvester's father so infatuated that he almost abandoned his wife and children. Mrs. Sylvester thus fell into depression and madness. That woman was ruthless. In order to take the position, when she was pregnant, she went to see Mrs. Sylvester and didn't hesitate to roll down the stairs and miscarry. So as to frame Mrs. Sylvester. This move indeed made Sylvester's father completely disgusted with Mrs. Sylvester and determined to divorce. Mom didn't want to divorce, and Dad left with that woman. Mom left my brother and me behind and drove to chase Dad, and then had an accident and died on the spot. So that woman married Dad as a matter of course. Unfortunately, God has eyes. She fell too hard that time and could never get pregnant again. Sylvester narrated expressionlessly as if he were telling someone else's story. After Mrs. Sylvester died, Sylvester's father married his white moonlight love, but soon got tired of her and began to play around with women everywhere. And he liked younger women. He also cared a great deal about his face and reputation. So Sylvester took the blame for him. Everyone knew that Sylvester often changed girlfriends, and always liked women a few years older than him. He was a well-known dandy. My brother is very excellent and has been involved in business very early. If he changed girlfriends every day, no one would believe it. I have been rebellious since childhood and a band. It's normal for me to change girlfriends. Probably my look was too obvious. And he smiled. Don't be sympathetic. Every time I agree to take the blame for him, I will get something. And I can make my stepmother unhappy. Why not do it? One day, his good days will come to an end. My brother and I have already designed a plan for them and found a place. I said, I support you. He laughed wantonly. That day we had a long heart-to-heart talk. He talked about the grudges in the Sylvester family. I talked about the love-hate relationship with Nathan. I asked him, it's hard to imagine that a person like you would be willing to follow the arrangement to go on a blind date. Sylvester said, I don't like blind dates. After a pause, he said, except for meeting the woman I like. He added, sister, break up quickly. I'm waiting to take your place. I was stunned for a moment, and my face gradually became hot. After the blind date, my father asked me how I felt. I noticed that he was very persistent about the marriage alliance with the Sylvester family. So I said, it's okay. After what happened with Nathan and getting the shares, I no longer cared about my partner. Marriage alliance was my responsibility. Anyone would do. Since that day, Sylvester had been chasing me non-stop. He sent me all kinds of expensive bags, jewelry, and clothes, and invited me to various places to have fun. His enthusiasm and straightforwardness made me overwhelmed. He was very different from Nathan. Nathan was a traditional elite, polite, ambitious, and gentle. He was the type that most women liked. Sylvester was rebellious and perverse. He was not liked by proper women. The jewelry he sent me had very special designs. And sometimes there was even a cute skull added. The places he took me to were not traditional elegant places, but some so-called messy places. Bars, nightclubs, yachts, some non-mainstream street dance areas, underground music venues. And he even took me to the Comic-Con. We were doing things that were called bad boy behaviors. It was disturbing but also very exciting. There was another big difference between Sylvester and Nathan. He liked to whisper dirty words in my ear to tease me. Sister, when can I take your place? Why are you in such a hurry? Because I want to undress you. I almost made it last time. Shameless. Every time I would be teased by him until my face turned red. One day he said that he wanted me to participate in a project analysis. When I got there were only the two of us in the meeting room. He opened the projection solemnly and made a presentation. Project name, The Marriage Alliance between Sylvester and Celia Chen. Now, let me introduce Sylvester's advantages. His photo and all kinds of information were shown. Educational background and height were okay. What is 18 centimeters? I pointed at the bold and blackened sexual ability, and asked in a trembling voice. He talked eloquently. As you can see, sexual life is a very important stabilizer in marriage. My advantage is obvious. If you don't believe it, you are welcome to check the goods at any time. Madman. Big madman. I was so angry that I turned around and left immediately. Sylvester is too unconventional and often unexpected, which makes me at a loss and not know what to do. He is not the partner I imagined. Everything about him is beyond my expectation. My life has been messed up by him. When I come to my senses, I find that I haven't thought of Nathan for a long time. And I'm not very sad either. I seem to dislike him. But at the same time I look forward to him. Because I have experienced the excitement that I haven't experienced in more than 20 years. For that kind of excitement, I scold on the surface and pretend to be disdainful. Privately, I'm a little expectant. It's very much like some good girl types, who pretend to be dismissive of edgy men, but secretly watch their Liz streams privately. They usually behave very seriously but secretly read some very racy articles under the quilt at night. Days passed reluctantly in this way. Once Sylvester took me to play billiards. I found that his skills were very good. Even better than Nathan's. I was shocked. Obviously. On the day of the bet. He was not as good as Nathan. If Nathan hadn't deliberately lost the game, Sylvester would have been the loser. Were you deliberate that day? I asked. Sylvester hit the last ball and smiled wickedly. Who wasn't deliberate? I was silent for a while. Did you want to embarrass Aria? He spread his hands. She is my father's girlfriend. I dislike her. Sylvester told me that when Nathan provoked him and bet with their girlfriends, he thought it was unreasonable and refused at first. But Nathan kept pestering him, staring at Aria intently. That kind of look was sticky. As if the old feelings were still there. Suddenly, he became interested and decided to deliberately lose to Nathan and to see how things would develop. So he agreed to the bet. Unexpectedly, Nathan actually lost blatantly. After listening, I had mixed feelings. I liked you before and was willing to go on a blind date with you. But you actually scolded me. He said. I want you to know what kind of person the man you abandoned me for is. I was at a loss. Ah? You liked me? Sylvester said faintly. You only had Nathan in your eyes. What was I? You couldn't even see me. After breaking up that day, Nathan had been calling and texting me, constantly apologizing. At first I took a look. And then I blocked him. He was beaten lame by Sylvester, and was recuperating in the hospital. Having difficulty in moving. He had come to see me several times. But I was taken away by Sylvester, and never met him. My engagement with Nathan has not been officially broken off because there is still a cooperation project between our two families. The parents of both sides have already communicated about the matter of breaking off the engagement. Once the cooperation is over, the engagement will be broken off immediately. At present, the project is in the final stage. Miss, these are the roses sent by Mr. Nathan. When I got home, the aunt was holding a large bunch of roses and asking me what to do with them. The roses were bright and beautiful, fresh and lovely. There are a total of roses. I was slightly stunned and quickly realized. Day was the day of my engagement to Nathan. On that day, knowing that he would be engaged to Aria, I didn't attend their engagement banquet but drove out of the city and went to the seaside. On the beach, I sat from morning until noon, and my body was chilled by the sea breeze. I was thinking in my heart, I love him so much. But he is getting married to another woman. What should I do? Later, Nathan called me and asked me to go back and get engaged to him. I was so excited that I fell off the rock, stumbled towards the car and raced back to the city. The situation at that time was still vivid in my mind. I stared at the roses blankly for a while and carefully examined my feelings. There was no fluctuation at all. The engagement was like yesterday. But my feelings were no longer the same as before. At this moment, I knew that I had completely let go. I said, throw them away. The aunt asked. There is also a handwritten letter in the bouquet. Don't you want to read it? I smiled and shook my head. No. The aunt carried the roses away. I drove to the apartment where Nathan and I used to live and packed up my things. When I arrived, there was no one inside. I didn't have many personal items. And after packing for a while, I was done. I was about to leave with the suitcase when Nathan suddenly opened the door and came in. Celia. Seeing that I was about to leave, Nathan was worried. He threw away his crutches and jumped in front of me. Do we really have to be like this? He used the word, make trouble, to describe my breakup. Avoiding seeing each other during this period made him more and more irritable. I was impulsive that day. You know I hate Aria. It's impossible for me to be with her. Is it necessary to break up? We are not little boys and girls anymore. Don't break up at the drop of a hat. It will make people laugh at us. I was silent for a moment and said, Nathan, I'm not making trouble. I'm serious. He didn't believe it. You have liked me for nearly years. We grew up together. We are childhood sweethearts. We have experienced so many things. Now we are engaged, and will get married soon. How can we break up? He listed the proofs of my love for him. When we were in primary school, we got lost together and huddled together to keep warm. When he fought in middle school, I helped and got injured. When his grades were not ideal in high school, I spent a whole summer vacation with him. In college, whenever he quarreled with Aria, no matter how late it was, I would pick him up. Not to mention the family crisis. I got engaged to him to turn the situation around. I listened quietly, thought for a while, and said, Really? So I've done so much for you. I had forgotten all about it. Once upon a time, I gave to him as a matter of course. Like breathing. I was kind to him. I kept being kind to him. And then I forgot. Never asking for anything in return. You saved my life. And I'll repay you with 3 promises. Now I don't owe you anything. I said. We are even. Celia. Nathan rushed up to stop me. His foot hadn't fully recovered yet. And he suddenly fell to the ground, looking very embarrassed. I couldn't bear it and went forward to help him up. He tightly grasped my hand, his eyes shining. Celia, you still love me, right? I immediately broke free and took a step back. Celia. Just as I was about to say something, my cell phone rang. I picked it up. Where are you? It was Sylvester's voice. I was startled and glanced at Nathan before saying, I'm packing up my things in the apartment and getting ready to leave. Sylvester, I'll come and pick you up. No need. Wait for me. I was surprised. Did he know where the apartment I was talking about was? The room was very quiet. And Nathan heard my conversation with Sylvester. His face gradually became gloomy and flustered. Celia. Who is that man? Before, when I came to look for you, you were always not there. Were you with another man? I put away my phone. We've broken up. You don't need to know. We haven't broken up. Nathan raised his voice. I didn't agree. We haven't broken up. We were going to get married. He roared like a child. As if just by loudly proclaiming it, things would become what he wanted. I quietly watched him lose his temper. When he calmed down, I said, Nathan, being in love is not the same as getting married. It doesn't require the consent of both parties to end. A one-sided end is also an end. There were glistening tears in Nathan's eyes. As if he was about to cry. Celia, don't be so cruel. We were fine. Why did it turn out like this? I don't love Aria anymore. That day was just a very small matter. Can you forgive my momentary impulse? He said that day was just a very small matter. He still doesn't understand until now that when a person leaves, it must be because they have accumulated enough disappointment and only under the pressure of the last straw do they choose to leave. I thought for a while and said, just think of me as being unreasonable and making trouble for no reason. He thought I would explain, just like many times before. But he never expected that I would directly admit that I was being unreasonable. And he was suddenly stunned on the spot. Unable to say a word. I said, you know, I'm a tomboy. With a bad and stubborn temper. Not as gentle and elegant as Aria. I like to be unreasonable. To be petty. And to be illogical. I've always been like this. So you've never liked me. Before. I was forcing it. Now I've let go. Since we don't like each other. Let's just part ways. When I got downstairs, Sylvester had already arrived. He got out of the car to help me with my luggage and put it in the trunk. It's you? Nathan saw Sylvester and was very angry. Celia, don't stoop so low as to be with this playboy. He has a lot of girlfriends. He won't love you. Sylvester narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. I said, it has nothing to do with you. I opened the door and got in the car in one smooth motion. In the rear view mirror, Nathan kept running while shouting my name. Suddenly, he fell to the ground while running. He looked very pitiful. But I didn't want to help him up anymore. The car moved forward silently. I was inexplicably crying. Sylvester drove quietly, not saying a word. Thanks to his silence, it gave me enough time and space to sort things out on my own. After a long time, I stopped crying. I felt very comfortable inside. It was as if the remaining emotions in my heart had been washed away with my tears. After a while, I said, Sylvester. I want to check. He turned to look at me. I said, I want to know if there are centimeters. Sylvester has centimeters. Being with him, I experienced an unprecedented feeling of climbing the cloud peak. My soul seemed to break away from my body, and I felt as if I was floating on air. Putting aside emotions and measuring with various conditions, he is an excellent marriage partner. Young, rich, good-looking, and able to bring me all kinds of surprises. Oh, his ability in that aspect is also great. Enough. It's enough. Don't be too greedy in life. The cooperation between the two families ended, and both sides announced the friendly termination of the engagement. Nathan didn't agree. But with the general trend, there was nothing he could do even if he didn't agree. His leg had healed, and he squatted downstairs at my place every day, begging for a reunion. He was there in wind, in rain, never absent. But I no longer moved. Eventually, the bet that day got out after all. Many people said that Aria was a femme fatale, killing two birds with one stone. She hooked the heart of the second son of the Sylvester family, and also made the son of the Nathan family be unable to forget her, even breaking off his engagement with the Chen family without hesitation. She was a legendary woman, and secretly admired by many people. The news of my marriage alliance with Sylvester hadn't been announced yet. Nominal why? Aria was still his girlfriend. Several times when I saw her, she was being fussed over and showed some postures of a victor. She seemed to think that she was Cleopatra, and having two excellent men fighting for her was an honor in life. I took a faint look and left, fooling around not far away with her nominal boyfriend. She was after my boyfriend. I was after her boyfriend. Well, it was so fair. I had unconsciously become a traditional bad woman. Men love bad women. Sylvester nibbled my ear. I laughed and tugged at his hair. Afterwards, Sylvester held me, sweating all over and complaining. I hate Nathan. I hate that he follows you every day. I hate his attitude that you will surely come back to him. I stroked his head to comfort him. I ignored him. Don't worry. I love you the most. Liar. He rubbed against me. Sister. You are lying. I'm not lying. I like you very much right now. Who wouldn't like a tall, handsome, rich and good-looking young man? When I was innocent and childish, I had a secret crush on someone. I blushed and my heart raced. I didn't dare to easily say out my love. It took me a long time to struggle over writing a love letter, for fear that speaking out would disturb him. Now I can easily say, I love you. I say, I love you every day. Only, I no longer blush or have my heart race. Sylvester narrowed his eyes. I will solve our problems. I said. Oh? How will you solve them? He pecked me. Dad is tired of Aria. He is going to change his girlfriend. Before long, Nathan disappeared from downstairs. Sylvester said that Aria was looking for Nathan to get back together. She cried and apologized, saying that she had an irresistible reason for running away from the wedding at the beginning. Someone had forced her to leave. As for who forced her, she just kept shaking her head without saying. Naturally, Nathan thought it was me. So he disappeared from downstairs of my place and then high profile got back together with Aria. The power of first love is really strong. I opened the curtain, letting the sunlight shine all over my body. Fortunately, I broke up quickly. If I hadn't, when your father got tired of her and Aria cried to get back together with Nathan, he would surely abandon me immediately. I don't know how sad I would be then. Sylvester silently hugged me from behind. Nathan and Aria made an official announcement. Sylvester and I also made an official announcement. Everyone was shocked. The official announcement between Sylvester and me was a proper one. Both families made statements. On Nathan and Aria's side, it was only Nathan's one-sided official announcement. The Nathan family didn't agree at all. Sylvester's father doted on Aria very much and had spoiled her for more than half a year. More or less. Some traces were left. When the people of the Nathan family heard some rumors, they didn't want Aria to enter their family at all and forced Nathan to break up with Aria. Nathan didn't believe that the pure gardenia could be corrupted. He broke with his family for love. Before running away from home, he deliberately changed his mobile phone to call me. Celia, I'm with Aria now. I didn't expect that you had destroyed the relationship between Aria and me in order to climb up. You used all means. Now you abandon me for a trifle. I won't let you get what you want. I will be with Aria and show you a happy life. My mood was hard to describe in words. If it had been a breakup in the past, my heart would have been as dead as ashes and I would have been desperate about love. At this moment, hearing his words, I began to be ashamed of having liked him for so many years. Love is so unreasonable. It comes like a strong wind and goes like a sudden thunder. When in love, the other person is like a celestial being. When not in love, the other person becomes a stain. Thinking back carefully, Nathan had always been irrational and impulsive in doing things. Unfortunately, the halos of childhood sweethearts and lifesavers dazzled me. I said, yes, in order to break up your engagement at the beginning. I threatened Aria. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I was terribly wrong. I sincerely repented and blessed them. After hanging up the phone, I sighed deeply. Sylvester was very capable. He said he would solve the problem of Nathan. And he really did it. And he made me have no lingering feelings at all. To be able to do this, his means were extremely terrifying. He was also very sly. When Sylvester really brought Aria to live together and broke with his family, he told his stepmother that Aria was his father's mistress. His stepmother had become neurotic because Sylvester's father played around with women, and she couldn't get pregnant. Hearing Sylvester's words, she immediately went crazy and led a large group of people to break into Aria's place, stripped Aria naked in public and scolded her bitterly for seducing her husband. Only then did Nathan know that when Aria left him at the beginning, it was not because of being coerced or lured, but simply because she saw that the Nathan family was about to fall and be in debt and didn't want to live a hard life with him. So she ran away. She was nominally Sylvester's woman but actually Sylvester's father's mistress. Later, he knew that when Aria was being ambiguous with him, she already had a boyfriend. Her boyfriend worked to support her. In order to be with Nathan, Aria desperately dumped her pure boyfriend. So, at the beginning, she was always keeping Nathan at arm's length, never agreeing to his pursuit and never announcing that she had a boyfriend. Nathan therefore thought that she was chaste and noble, tossed and turned for her, and kept asking me how to pursue a girl. It was not until the trouble was completely solved that she officially got together with Nathan. His so-called pure gardenia was not pure from the very beginning. Nathan was extremely furious. A pair of ill-fated lovers finally became a resentful couple. Suddenly, Sylvester's father had a stroke. Sylvester and his brother sent him to the nursing home without hesitation. His stepmother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and was also sent to the mental hospital. There were signs of their illnesses. The stepmother had always been babbling, and she even beat Aria in public and stripped her naked. Obviously, she was mentally abnormal. Sylvester's father had high blood pressure. After he was exposed for using his son as a cover to philander, He was so angry that his heart was affected. He had a big quarrel with Sylvester in the study. And the next day he had a stroke. It all seemed so natural that there was no flaw to be found. Sylvester's brother took control of the company, and Sylvester became the second largest shareholder. He didn't linger in the company but started his own business and founded another company. I thought he would be into music, street dance or trendy brands. But unexpectedly his career was surprisingly serious: semiconductors. He always surprised me. Sylvester and I got married smoothly. He invited me to become a shareholder in his company on an equal footing. I began to learn slowly, instead of interfering in affairs. I worked at the grassroots level. Although the company was small, it gave me a strong sense of belonging. The days were peaceful and busy. One afternoon, I was drinking coffee in my favorite coffee shop. Suddenly, Nathan walked in. He looked haggard, as if he hadn't had a good sleep for many days. He sat opposite me. A little awkwardly. "Celia, I've been watching you for many days. I know I shouldn't bother you, but I couldn't help it. I know I misunderstood you. At the beginning, you didn't for Aria." I thought for a while and said gently, "Hello." He didn't seem to expect me to be so polite. He was stunned for a moment and became speechless. His lips trembled as if there were 1,000 words that he couldn't suddenly say. I asked, "I accept your apology. Is there anything else?" Suddenly, he cried. It was really sudden. I was completely unprepared and a little bewildered. He wiped away his tears and looked up. "Celia, there's no possibility for us anymore, right?" I stretched out my hand to show the diamond ring on my finger. "Nathan, I'm married. Once upon a time, I stubbornly wanted to hold on to the ignorant affection in my youth. I yearned for it but couldn't get it, and tossed and turned. Later, I realized it was an overly beautified dream. People will always beautify the people they loved and the things they experienced when they were young and ignorant. They think that the past was all wonderful. They can't forget their first love for a long time. In fact, it was just an illusion. People always have to grow up and become mature." I had finished my coffee. I got up and left, feeling very calm. I said gently to him, like to a stranger, "Goodbye, Nathan."